by the Rest with myself, Paul Watson, and my co-host, friend, YouTuber, astronaut, Sam Nicholson.
Well, very kind.
The podcast that makes you ask yourself, maybe I'm not as big a piece of shit as I thought I was.
It's a question I like to ask myself very often.
And I think this podcast will give you that answer.
Good.
You're probably not. So, Sam, how are we feeling? We've gone through the history of the island to the present day, or at least the last 20 years. What are your thoughts now?
I'd say I'm feeling quite apprehensive.
Yeah?
I feel like there's something big coming.
Yeah, there's definitely something big coming.
Yeah. So, nervous, I think, is a good word for it.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to go. Well, what we're going to do now today, so what I'll do is I'll sum up. So just to catch everyone up who may have decided to skip the last couple of episodes and get to the juicy bit, we were looking at basically now being about 20 years away. So we're at 1999.
Yeah.
With Pitcairn, obviously, is a set of small islands. There's about 4 of them. One of them is inhabited. We've gone through everything from the mutiny on the Bounty to the mutineers finding Pitcairn, settling in, all killing themselves, killing each other.
Yeah, we've gone through quite a long period of history, haven't we?
Yeah. So
we're very long period.
A long period, yeah. So we're up to 200 years ago, basically, to the modern day.
Effectively present day.
Which we managed to squeeze in about 45
I
minutes.
think we did well.
We have. Cool. So what we're going to do is we'll get up to the modern day. So it's December 1999. A 15-year-old girl approaches a British police officer, a lady called Gail Cox, and who's basically on temporary assignment to the island. So essentially how it works on the island is, because obviously they're under British rule, way of putting it, they send police officers on temporary assignment. They work there for like 6 months, 12 months, and then they go home and they rotate them out again.
Right. So it's like a bit of a posting, like an army thing, but for the police.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. I imagine that's an interesting one to get if you're a police officer. Fancy going 7,000 miles away to...
What?
Yeah. So, whilst on assignment, Gail Cox was approached by a 15-year-old girl, basically claiming that she was sexually assaulted by a visiting New Zealander.
Right.
So this wasn't a Pitcairner, this was someone else who visited the island.
Yeah.
This 15-year-old girl was unfortunately raped, and she reported it to Gail Cox. Now, this was essentially a catalyst, because what this did is it brought to the surface a few more accusations that this girl had.
Right.
And she ended up basically confiding in the fact that she was further raped by 2 other men who were on the island.
Right. Okay.
So this, as you can imagine, led to further questioning and essentially ended up unearthing decades-long line of sexual abuse of children for all age ranges, very young children up into teenagers, for like I say, decades, from all ages. So
it's quite sickening, isn't it?
Very. And we're not going into every detail, but it's probably worth saying, if you're of a bit of a disposition, it might not be worth listening to. Maybe a trigger warning.
Yeah, I think you've got permission to turn off now if this affects you. Absolutely.
Yeah, every permission. So what then gets unearthed is, like I say, that long line of sexual abuse, and an investigation is triggered by the British government, and it's dubbed Operation Unique, interviewing pretty much every man and woman still alive on the island or not. In total, 31 men were named. Accused people, yeah. Wow. So you could keep that in context as well. There's an island of a population at the time, at least around 50.
Okay.
Nearly 2/3 of the men or people that live on that island have now been accused of some sort of sexual assault, rape, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Pretty fucked up. So how did they get away with this for so long? That's the kind of question that people ask. And we're going to kind of touch on that as the podcast goes on. But essentially, everyone's related. Everyone knows each other. And that isolation that we've talked about previously is the persistent problem here. Nobody's watching. Everyone's in on it.
Yeah. I mean, do you think... I'd be interested to know how much of it is down to Gail Cox sort of investigating and going further than people did in the past.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Is that a factor at play?
Yeah, so like things have been reported before this, I think.
Yeah.
I did read some notes here and there mentioning that things were raised, but the alarms Never, the alarms weren't raised beyond that. Didn't have really any major investigation. I think there was some accusations of rape in the 50s, but it didn't really go anywhere. But what we're going to do today is we're going to concentrate on one specific person, Steve Christian. Ringing any bells?
Is it Fletcher Christian's descendant by any chance?
Bang on the money, that's right. Yeah, so Steve Christian is a 200 years ago descendant of the original Fletcher Christian. So we didn't touch on it too much in the other episodes, but there are essentially, I think there's about 5 families on the island, maybe a couple more, but there's about 5 families. And the Christians still kind of hold quite a lot of the power, which is really interesting. It's almost like a fiefdom. If you don't know what a fiefdom is, it's pretty much what a lot of countries have in a democracy where certain ruling families control everything. It's not quite a royal family, as it were, but it's...
Yeah, I mean, there isn't really any true democracy in the world, is there? I think it's...
No. And I think that's a discussion for another day.
Yeah, that's not
but yeah,
that's not for today's podcast.
You get the idea. So... Yeah, Steve Christian was born 26th of June 1951, so now he's in his 70s. Being a direct line obviously seems to have given him some power. Steve Christian has a lot of jobs. He has multiple jobs, in fact. Being an island of 50 people, that's not all too surprising. And I'm gonna read them now because I've got a big old list. Steve is the island's supervising engineer,
right?
Dentist,
obviously.
Radiographer,
yeah.
and coxswain, basically the dude who runs the boats.
Yeah, busy man then.
Busy man. Those longboats are also really important. Like if you can run the longboats, you're a very important member of that society.
Yeah,
you're the only lifeline. You're the umbilical cord to civilization as you know it, really. Because I mention it later on, but like you say, there's no airports. There's no ships, as it were, that you have. Those longboats are the only things that can get over the kind of the craggly and scraggly rocks that surround the island, and were originally why the mutineers rested, or was it found, discovered, whatever you want to call it, relocated to Pitcairn in the first place. Another thing as well, Steve was the mayor. He ran the place.
Wow, okay.
He was mayor for about 5 years up until the end of the trial.
So mayor, dentist, radiographer, and boatman.
But yeah, he did it all.
Wow.
Lots of people had multiple jobs here because, again, small population.
Sure, yeah.
Everyone has to be quite handy.
But it's 5 very specialist jobs, isn't it? It's not like he cleaned the car parks, tended the gardens. He wasn't a handyman. The guy was a dentist and a radiographer.
I know,
Did
right?
he go to medical school?
Probably. I don't know. But there's lots of records of people who live on the island going to places like New Zealand, getting educated in different parts of the world. It's not all. Yeah, they didn't stay on the island that much.
There isn't a medical school off Pitcairn.
No, believe it or not, there
That
isn't.
Steve Christian both runs and studies at.
Yeah, that's right. So Steve was described as quite a well-built man, like many of the other men, and even the women on the island, all having quite physical jobs. The whole Polynesian background, a bit of a general rule of thumb, but like Polynesians are quite well-built, like Samoans and things like that. It just gives you, your sense that you're thousands of miles away from the nearest urbanised civilization. Everyone does have to pull their weight.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I mentioned that the airports and the boats and things, but I can't stress this enough. You pretty much have to have a heart attack to even get a helicopter out to you.
Yeah, so you are completely and utterly isolated.
Correct, that's right. But with this coming out into the open, you'd assume that obviously the women would jump to, point the finger and say, what the hell have you been doing all these years?
Yeah.
Well, no. In fact, the women of the island were pretty much more than happy to defend them.
I suppose, again, I'm not diminishing what happened at all, but if you've grown up with it, and that is all you know as a way of life, it must be quite difficult to find out that isn't normal and shouldn't be happening, I guess.
So, yeah, we're going to discuss a bit about this. We're going to talk about the culture, and I think it's safe to say there's a very strong patriarchy kind of going on here. There's a very patriarchal society. So I mentioned that Steve, he runs the boats. No women do this.
Right.
Like, there's no women radiographers. There's no women dentists. They're all
you wouldn't need two or anything.
I mean, that'd be overkill. But, like, you've got to keep in context here, like, the women, comparable to the men at least, don't do, and I'm using kind of air quotes here, the important jobs.
Yes, I understand.
The women raise the kids. Women collect the food and design the boats that they sell to cruise ships, I'm guessing. So, yeah, a bit of a neckbeard's paradise.
Yeah.
If I'm honest with you, Sam.
Incels United.
Incels United. So, yeah, it's pretty messed up. In fact, like I say, the only thing that the women really did when this whole thing kicked off was defend the men. They were adamant that everything they did was perfectly okay. In fact, Steve's wife, Olive Christian, said, quote, "I haven't seen a single rape on Pitcairn, but there has been underage consensual sex."
Yeah.
So you've so let's unwrap this a little bit.
Boy.
Let's unwrap this a little bit. So she knows that sex happened outside of their marriage, I assume, because Steve's one of the main people who've been accused here.
With underage people.
With underage girls, yep.
But it was consensual, apparently.
But it was consensual. So, like, that, going back to what you just said there, the ingrained culture, she's just fine with this.
Yeah, it's Tuesday. For her.
It's Tuesday. Yeah,
she had pasta for tea and watched someone get raped. Tuesday.
Yeah. Like, and again, just to give you a little bit more information on Steve's accusation. So he was accused of raping a fair few girls on the island. He also was accused of abusing his own children.
Okay.
Yeah, let that sink in a little bit. Like, real piece of shit. And again, we can only but assume here, but I'm guessing Olive knew this. Olive Christian knew about this happening. Anyway. You're going to need a cigarette after this.
So some whiskey, I think.
So Olive and Steve Christian lived in a house which was called Big Fence, which is where a lot of the kind of meetings kind of took place. It was almost like an unofficial meeting, meeting place for everyone on the island, especially the women, because again, the women were quite cliquey with each other as well as the men being quite cliquey with each other. In fact, when journalists arrived, they basically spent as much time as possible trying to convince them that their husbands, their sons, their brothers, etc., were innocent and good people. They were hard-working people. This is kind of a rhetoric that they keep returning to, is saying like, you know, these are hard-working men. They not only would they not do this kind of thing, or they wouldn't do it unconsensually, but they're the backbone of this island. Without them, we are nothing.
So, yeah, I mean, we see it a lot, don't we? When cults, for example, when it all kind of comes out in the wash that people involved have basically been brainwashed. And
this is kind of I'm getting that feeling as well. Again, I've been to Pitcairn, but from the sources that I've read and the investigation that I've done, this is just generation after generation of accepting this. And obviously this whole case is blowing this all wide open. It's showing a mirror to these people. In fact, I've got a quote here from a journalist who went to the island at a time called Kathy Marks. Quote, "We had been in Big Fence for several hours and no one was showing any sign of moving. The women, it seemed, were willing to stay for as long as it took to win us over. When we got our cameras out, they smiled repeatedly. We could take as many pictures as we wanted." So they're going on a charm offensive here. By around 2001, so keep in mind it started all in 1999, by 2001 they were making international headlines. I mean, this was making it obviously in the United Kingdom, making it in New Zealand, Australia, though obviously the areas around the Pacific. This was just getting picked up everywhere. So what we'll do is we'll talk a little bit about the culture as well. So their culture it's mostly, obviously, if you go back far enough, it's Polynesian and it's British people that came to this island. And throughout this entire kind of run up to the trial, they had a series of defences, as it were, that justified what they were doing. And like I say, there's loads of stories. I can't touch on all of them in this podcast, but just to give you a feel for the culture, a part of their defence was that they were Polynesian. Polynesian culture gives you justification to do whatever you want and have sex with kids, apparently.
Right.
And
I'm not sure Polynesian people would agree with that.
No, I don't think they would as well.
No.
Don't get me wrong, there's loads of cultures and probably some Polynesian-y, Malaysian-y type cultures or in that area that maybe had child marriages.
Yeah, I mean, if you go back far enough, pretty much every culture that we know about was okay with child marriage.
Yeah.
Going back to the ancient Greeks, it's been shown that they married people as young as 11 and 12.
We talked about it in the first podcast, the first episode, where Fletcher Christian was essentially a man from the age of 14. It was you finished school, you became a man at 14, you were working on boats from the age of 8, potentially. There was a difference there, but yeah, it's 1999.
The rest of the world's moved on, and they're still acting like it's 500 years ago.
Yeah, or 200 years, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But it's mad. Like I'm going to give you a quote now, and this is something I couldn't resist not having in this podcast, because it's a lady called Colleen McCullen. I might have that surname incorrect, but never mind. She married a Pitcairn descendant. So this man that she married didn't live on the island anymore, but I think they lived on Norfolk Island, which is a reasonable neighbour, and by a reasonable neighbour, probably about 1,000 miles away. And she said, quote, they are so much Polynesian as anything else. It's Polynesian culture to break in your girls at 12 years old. She went on, the Poms have cracked the whip, and it's an absolute disgrace. These are indigenous customs, and they should not be touched. These were the first people to inhabit Pitcairn Island. They're racially unique. Yeah, let that sink in.
Right.
Break in girls at the age of 12.
Yeah.
Now,
I mean, I'm no expert on Polynesian culture. I'll freely admit that. But I would imagine if you go to any other island with Polynesian heritage and Polynesian people living there, they do not break their girls in at the age of 12.
Nor do they use the term break them in.
No.
It's not a pair of shoes, Sam.
It's not. Or a horse.
Exactly. Now, I feel like I shouldn't have to argue this particular quote, but I'm gonna. So, this is a terrible argument for a couple of main reasons amongst millions of others. One, a lot of these men ended up pleading not guilty. So they clearly knew it was a crime, so why hide it?
Yeah.
In fact, nearly all of them pled guilty. I think there's a couple that pled guilty for a few bits and bobs here and there, but on the whole, the consensus was not guilty.
They didn't do it.
Yeah, they effectively didn't do it. The second one, aside from a few other aspects here, was very little to show that they even followed their Polynesian culture anymore. So they talk about being Polynesian and having a Polynesian culture. Sure, they had some Polynesian dishes. If you were to look at like their average meal, there'll be a lot of Polynesian-y type foods there. But other than that, they don't really follow anything else. I don't have any prime examples with me right now, but
sure,
the food is about it, and that's because that's what the island grows. Like I've mentioned, breadfruit that was brought by the Bounty. As far as they're concerned, they're British as you and me.
I mean, they're not. They're not racially unique either.
No.
Because British and Polynesian people have been mixing for centuries.
Well, not even that. So the original Polynesian Tahitians, whatever you want to call it, Tahitians that came over on the Bounty, and they obviously ended up having children with them. There really wasn't much, as it were, mixing after that. There was a lot more white people that came to the island than
and just
Tahitians.
kind of took over the island, almost.
Yeah, exactly. And I said in one of the early episodes, they killed them all.
Yeah.
So not really that big a fan of Polynesian culture.
So they're not racially anything but white, effectively, are they?
Pretty much. I mean, don't get me wrong. If you met, I mean, I looked at some of the photos of some of the islanders, and they do look kind of. They've got some Polynesian blood in them. I'll give you that.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. Yeah. Anyway, so furthermore, to some of these accusations, and another kind of reason why what they're talking about is utter bullshit. And apologies again. Prepare yourself a little bit here. There were accusations of rape of children as young as 3, toddlers. Like this isn't breaking in kids at 12.
This isn't boys will be boys.
No, there is nothing in UK law, any law that I did have a very brief look at that says it's cool. Yeah, if they're literal, basically babies, that's fine.
Yeah, like
there's nothing there. I mean, just going back to again hitting the Polynesian thing one more time. I've got a quote here. So, to a visitor, this was an article I'm quoting from.
Right.
Quote: To a visitor, though, Pitcairn appears almost entirely westernised. There is no Tahitian dance or music, costume, language or architecture. Tahitian stories and legends have not been handed down. The Polynesian side has never been encouraged. This was actually, I think this was a quote from Betty Christian. It's an island in the Pacific, but it's not a Pacific island. So that's an actual Pitcairnian.
It's like, it's a strange comparison to make, but it's like how Benidorm is like England in Spain.
Yeah.
This is England in the Pacific.
Pretty much, yeah. Like, it arguably is very, very westernised. I mention it later on, but they have a British flag, like, hanging up in their community centre, which eventually becomes a courthouse, which we'll touch on soon. But yeah, they were throwing everything at the wall. So during the trial, an article came out, and again, I'm quoting here, the men's lawyers had also argued that the Bounty's mutineers who settled on the island stopped being British subjects when they burnt the ship in 1789.
Interesting argument.
A terrible one, because no, it's not a good enough argument.
If burning a ship stripped you of citizenship, we'd all do it.
Exactly. Burning a ship and being a mutineer doesn't strip you of citizenship. So, like, one, it's a rubbish, because if let's just say the court took that, they go, okay, well, you're all mutineers then, we're going to hang you.
Yeah.
Like, if you have no citizenship. And also, let's not forget another thing, again, mentioned in earlier episodes, we're giving them aid. Like, Pitcairn gets about £3 million a year to build infrastructure, pay for their fuel, because they don't have like a power plant. They run off diesel generators. Mm-hmm. They only get power about 10 hours a day. Like, we pay for all of that. Our taxpayer money pays for this island of pedos. to put it bluntly.
Oh, I feel a bit sick.
It gets worse. Let me carry on. So, another argument they also had was it's a British conspiracy. Apparently they said it was because they didn't want to waste money on the island anymore, which, granted, I will agree. We are wasting money on this island.
How much are we wasting?
About £3 million a year.
Okay. So for £3 million a year, we've decided to accuse 31 men of sex crimes against children of all ages.
Yeah. I'm not being funny, Sam, but that's too much admin. For the Brit, come on. Now, if we wanted to take an island off 50 unarmed civilians, we've got better ways of doing it than that. We would just kick them off.
We'd just go there.
We would go there and say...
Hasn't stopped us in the past, has it?
No. Well, in fact, this is probably another podcast for another day, but the Chagos Islands, they basically had... their own population of people. It was a British dependency. We kicked everyone off it so the US could build a base during the Cold War.
Even recently, we invaded Iraq.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. I imagine that's more than £3 million a year. But
exactly.
Yeah, there's better ways we can do this. This is too much admin. We ain't going to do that.
But what I mean is, if we were willing to invade Iraq to fix a problem, we would have found a way to fix the problem.
Yeah, 50 unarmed people. We'd find a better way to do it. So yeah,
just one man with a crossbow.
So just back to the original question, Sam. How you feeling?
Ill.
Yeah,
a little bit ill.
We'll get that whiskey. We'll get that cigarette going afterwards.
Yeah, it's never nice to hear about sex crimes and child abuse.
I'm a pretty, you know what? I'm a pretty liberal person when it comes to rehabilitation, putting people in bit. God damn no! These people need a fucking waterboarding. They need a curb stomping. Yeah. Anyway, we'll carry on. So let's get to the trial. So the trial started on the 30th of September in 2004. Years of build-up to this. And interestingly, the Pitcairnians were fighting on every stage here. So they were going to the press quite a lot, telling their own side of the story. The trial was actually meant to take place in New Zealand. Right. Quite reasonably so. They've got courthouses, they've got the infrastructure to handle it, they can deal with judges, all that kind of crap. But they fought it and they ended up having the trial in Pitcairn, which is interesting because they don't really have a courthouse.
Was Steve Christian also a lawyer?
No, I wouldn't be surprised though. They all had friends out of the island though, because again, I take you back to what I was saying before about the whole people kind of having the mystery of Pitcairn and wanting to know more about it. Like, they had friends on the outside, so I think their defence lawyer, the terrible one that's was saying that it's Polynesian culture.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure they were friends with the people on Pitcairn. Like they were supporters.
I suppose it's like any secretive state, isn't it? I know they're not a state, but if you think like North Korea, for example, Dennis Rodman used to be friends with Kim Jong-un.
Yeah.
Yeah,
stuff.
lots of weird stuff. Like Steven Seagal.
He's a Soviet now.
Yeah.
Doesn't he have a British passport? No,
He has a
Russian passport. Yeah.
Yeah.
He got a Russian passport. They've tried to sell him as like an envoy.
Yeah.
Really interesting. That's a podcast.
That is a podcast.
Yeah, he's a real piece of
What
shit.
action stars do next? After the filming stops.
So yeah, they had 3 judges that came to the island. There was no jury, which is peculiar, but I mean, I'm sure you can imagine why there wouldn't be a jury. That you can't have anyone impartial. Everyone knows each other.
Yeah, I mean, if it's going to be under British law, they could have brought a jury in.
Potentially, I guess. I didn't really think about it too much, but I think the idea is that they couldn't get a jury of their peers because they're all corrupt. But yeah. I suppose you could argue they could have gotten some people over from New Zealand. But also another point is, like I've said it before, they don't have infrastructure. These guys they don't have a prison. We're going to touch on this in a bit, but they don't even have a prison. They don't have a courthouse. They don't have really enough room to kind of keep these people. Again, the journalist I mentioned previously, Kathy Marks, talks about the fact that everyone's bunking up with everyone.
Yeah.
So when this all broke out and journalists came to the island to report on it, they were like shacking up in literally a shack with 5 other people because they couldn't accommodate people enough. They don't have, when they have tourists, for example, who come to stay, because if you do stay, you have to stay for a fair while. It's not like you can get a charter boat.
Yeah.
You end up living with the locals.
Right.
They don't have it.
Wow.
So obviously the "we're not British" stance, oddly enough, didn't work.
Yeah.
Along with their Polynesian heritage argument. If I was the lawyer working against these guys, I would have been having a field day because absolutely.
I mean,
useless.
the lowest paid public prosecutor surely could have got this one in the bag.
You'd think, yeah. Well, I don't want to, no spoiler alerts here, but we'll get to that. They pretty much everyone either went, like I say. This is another thing as well. They kind of argued the fact that because they were isolated, this was a minor argument they had. They had an argument they were isolated, they didn't understand the laws of the land of other people. And again, this is all bullshit. Like, it's recorded that Steve Christian and some of the more senior people of the island were always going away. They were going to New Zealand,
he had to
England.
go and get a dentistry degree somewhere.
Right.
Surely he learned some laws when he was doing that.
You'd think.
Don't rape kids.
Don't rape kids. That's a big one.
Rule number 1.
You enter in our country, don't rape kids. So to skip ahead a little bit then, on 24th of October 2004, the Pitcairn Supreme Court convicted 6...
the newly created...
Where
was the normal court?
They convicted 6 of the 7 accused on 35 of the 55 charges. A chap called Jay Warren, the former magistrate, I must add, was acquitted of all counts. Everyone else got some form of...
I mean, it seems unlikely, doesn't it, that he was completely innocent?
No, probably not. I mean, I don't want to assume justice is done and all that, but probably not. Like I say, Steve Christian pretty much admitted near the end that having sex with his own underage children, but he didn't rape kids, so he pled not guilty, and that's one of the things he kind of got caught out on.
Jesus.
So Steve Christian was convicted of 5 rapes in the end, acquitted of a few of the other charges. I won't say smaller charges because none of them are small charges. But yeah, he was convicted. He and his son, Randy Christian.
Really?
Come on.
Randy Christian.
Along with some of the other... Come on, Sam.
Sorry.
Keep it together.
Hey now.
Hey now. With some of the other island men served their time in a newly constructed prison. Now, obviously Pitcairn doesn't have a prison.
I was going to say, why not just send them to prison somewhere else?
So this, again, I think this is part of the argument that they needed these people. The island couldn't run without them. It's how Jordan, what's her name? Kate Price. It's how Kate Price keeps getting off, driving bans. She says that she's got a disabled kid to look after, which I'm sure she does.
She has.
She has, but stop taking cocaine and going for a drive to the local spa.
I'm not sure you can equate the two things.
God, no.
There's probably better examples.
There probably are, but I don't like Kate Price. Steve got 6 years for his crimes, which he didn't serve all the time for. He ended up getting a house arrest after several appeals. He had obviously some variety of restrictions.
He was raping his own kids?
Yep. British justice has
hell.
prevailed. I'd like to say...
Can I swear on this?
Yeah, of course.
Good.
Fuck. This is explicit. That's fine. I'm going to put the tag on.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's... you could argue it's probably no better than what would happen in Britain.
Yeah, I mean, technically it was in Britain, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, I suppose.
It was
I suppose
our law.
British dependency. Yeah, it's our law. So yeah, overall, pretty goddamn disappointing. If I'm honest with you, pretty much everyone got released early. The prison that they built themselves was eventually turned into holiday apartments for visiting tourists. So again, our taxpayer money, I don't mean to be this person, but with our taxpayer money that built this goddamn prison is now contributing to their economy.
It does kind of fuck up their conspiracy theory, doesn't
right?
it?
Yeah, I've got a feeling they're not kicking off about that. So, the fallout was not much. People got light sentences.
Well, can I just interrupt really
quick?
Yeah,
no, of course.
Do you remember this happening? Like when we were 15, it all came
I
out?
vaguely remember seeing a few reports about it, but I didn't go into great detail.
It doesn't ring a bell.
This was written about.
All.
The Guardian had... I think The Guardian might have had someone out there at the time.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy that it isn't taught. No. And like, it wasn't a massive deal that we still think about now.
No, it did get a lot of media attention at the time, but again, it dropped off pretty much as soon as it all happened, as it were. Like I say, between the accusation and the actual trial, there was obviously reports and things being released about it, but it was on and off. And you got to think about it. There's lots of other things that enter the news, and this is a faraway land. Like,
yeah, true.
I'm not defending it.
The news cycle is fickle, isn't it?
The news cycle is fickle.
Yeah. I mean, it was Euro 2004 that year. So
right, yeah, exactly, yeah.
Taking up some headlines.
But yeah, as for the community itself, you'd think it would potentially break down. It didn't. People were pissy with each other for a while because, like I said, and I haven't actually mentioned this, but some of the islanders did genuinely come forward. Some of them did come forward as witnesses. Like I say, I mentioned in the first podcast, one of the Christian girls, I can't remember her name now, but she came forward and spoke about this. A lot of the others obviously have hidden their identity. Some of them didn't live on the island anymore, and a lot of them got ostracised for this. They weren't allowed to see their families again. They weren't allowed to come back to the island. Like horrendous abuse, abuse of like their power, as it were, that they have on that little rock.
It really is like a cult, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Religious cults, especially.
Yeah, it's disgusting, but yeah, basically everyone got over it in the nicest way possible. They kind of just got on with their life after this. People kind of reform relationships, and in a weird way, like that's kind of how it has to be, because you can't just when you've got so few people to rely on. You've got to rely on them no matter what, almost. And that might be another reason that this got along for so long. Yeah, this went on for so long, and so many decades.
Especially somebody as talented as Steve Christian.
With his radiography and his dentistry.
And boat captaining.
This guy, he's got so many skills.
Unbelievable.
So yeah, after this all happened, obviously Steve Christian, as you can imagine, was stripped of his mayoral
dentistry
degree. Can't do his juggling anymore.
Can't pull teeth out anymore.
No, he was stripped of his mayor. I don't know what you call it.
That's at least
mayoral banner. I don't know.
Sash.
Yes, he had his sash taken away, and a chap called Mike Warren was brought in to replace him. And it was meant to be like a new age for Pitcairn. It's meant to be look, we're taken on board what's happened here. This isn't going to happen again, etc., etc. We're starting fresh here. In 2016, Mike Warren was arrested for having over 1,000 indecent pictures of children on his computer.
Fuck's sake, Mike.
They got the internet. I imagine they didn't have much internet around 2000, but they got it now.
Fast internet as well if they got it that late.
It might have been like that satellite internet, but that's beside the point. He managed to get enough internet to get 1,000 pictures of kids. No, it's not.
It's not about the internet speed. Let's focus.
You know what? We all make slip-ups, though. In 2020, he was arrested again for indecent exposure and walking around the island naked. So...
You've got to wear clothes, man. It's the bare minimum.
Just, don't fuck kids, wear clothes.
Rule 1, don't fuck kids. Rule 2, put some clothes on.
Put clothes on, wear clothes.
Rule 3, don't piss in the sea. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know, maybe on Pitcairn you shouldn't do that. But yeah, so like, where does this leave us? Like, personally, myself, I feel that the sea should take the island. I feel it should return back to nature.
Reclaim it from Mother Nature.
I feel this is where climate change is maybe going to work for us.
Yeah, it's really strange, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because in a lot of ways, we, as a society, we shouldn't be in the business of removing people from islands.
Not anymore. We haven't done that for a while.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that was bad when we did do it.
Yeah.
But I'd be willing to make an exception for.
Yeah, I think I would as well.
The men on Pitcairn.
A good island drowning. Get rid of all the men and just everyone. Everyone needs to get off that island.
Sacrifice a goat to the god of the sea.
Yeah.
And then Poseidon can just fuck them up.
Yeah, wipe them off the face of that fucking island.
Save all of the abused people. Obviously, they don't deserve to die.
Of course, no, not them. I mean, if it helps, the island population really has been dropping off a little bit. I think
depends on the reason, to be honest.
Well, we're going to touch on that a little bit. The island population's dropped off a bit. I think they're in they've got maybe 45 left.
Right.
It's not great. They have done a little bit of work to try and get people to immigrate. Funnily enough, though, Sam,
there's a certain kind of person you attract, isn't there?
There's a certain kind. Well,
come to the islands where you can rape kids and get away with it.
Let's address a few things. 'Cause funnily enough, this made the news. I actually remember this at the time. They did kind of make a big thing about coming to the island. That did make international news because they fed into the past. Oh, we're a paradise island in the middle of the Pacific.
All the breadfruit you can eat.
All the breadfruit you can stuff in your gob. But just go through this.
And now we have broadband.
And now we have broadband. But let's go into this. So if you want to immigrate to the Pitcairn Islands, let's just say you've not heard of any of this, Sam. You've not done this podcast. You want to immigrate. You want to change. You want to be a dentist on an island.
I spin the globe and go, where do I want to go? There.
Going to the Pitcairn Islands. You have to pay a £500 fee to register your immigration papers. Non-refundable.
Oh, okay.
Non-refundable.
Right.
They have not accepted a single person or family or hopefully not a family. A single person couple so far. Basically, they are not helping themselves here. So just to give you a bit of information here, you need hundreds of thousands of dollars because you need to build your own house. You only get a timed visa, so it could be that you pass all the tests or whatever it is that they give you. You get on the island, and they can just tell you to go.
They tell you to fuck off.
Build a house. Basically, the only thing they give you, assuming you got through all this, is a plot of land. Nothing else. You have to get all your own supplies, so you have to bring them in by basically a cargo ship. You have to build it yourself because you can't really. Well, you could get contractors, but that would be astronomically expensive. Yeah. And you also have to live on an island full of pedos, which isn't really my idea of fun.
No.
And also, I'm going to try and find it here.
To Epstein's Island, isn't it?
They have this in their immigration papers, as it were, or it's on their website. But they advise that you don't bring kids under the age of 16 to the island.
Oh, great!
Just a heads up in case you're getting any.
They'll get bored. Don't bring them.
If you're getting any red flags here, folks, don't bring kids.
Jesus,
we're gonna because rapists gonna rape. So perfect place to raise a family. And like I say, if you get rejected, you lose your £500.
So it's basically just a scam, isn't it? They just need those.
They're getting those £500 in from people. That's why
from paedophiles that want to move somewhere they can get away with it.
I mean, I don't know if it's attracted particularly many paedophiles. It could have.
To be fair, there isn't a lot of kids there, is there?
No, that's the thing. Well, funnily enough, this is a problem that they've got. So, and again, hopefully this is
not enough kids to rape.
Not enough kids to diddle. So hopefully this will be a bit of good news for you. So the population is ageing. As I mentioned, Steve Christian himself, the big man on campus, is in his 70s now. He was in his 50s at the accusation. The people under the age of 30 is in single digits. I think I saw a stat that's 7 or 8 people. Wow. I mean, the ones that are, below that age are basically kids that are looking to, go to university, make friends. Not be
come back.
Not be part of institutionalized rape.
Yeah.
All these things are reasons that people aren't hanging around now. Because also you've got to think about and I say local in the loosest term here. You've got New Zealand, you've got Australia, you've got British. Obviously, these people have British citizenship, so they can go to Britain. They can live in the UK if they want.
Yeah,
they can study there. Why would you stay?
Am I getting my geography really wrong, or are the British Virgin Islands not far away?
No, that's on the other side. So basically, imagine you've got Pitcairn on your really not describing on your east. You've got Chile. If you keep going east, you'll hit Chile.
Well, yeah,
if you keep going west, you'll get to obviously Tahiti, but you'll also get New Zealand and Australia in the kind of the southeast.
Yeah, I've got it.
Southwest. Sorry. that's kind of where you're at. So yeah, like just
Options, though.
you got options. Why would you stay on the island? Because this is the thing, the island doesn't have a lot of things still. It doesn't have roads. You can't drive a car on it yet. Everyone drives with quad bikes, and like it's not as fun as it sounds either. You're like, I can't stress again. You're so isolated. It's not a fun place to be, in my opinion, at least. So like to finish up, yeah, everyone needs a good waterboarding. Everyone needs a bit of a curb stomping. Take away the island, everyone should die. Yeah. I think that's pretty much where we will probably be leaving it.
Yeah.
What I would probably say, a little plug. I obviously I took sources from several different parts of the internet, but I also used a book. I mentioned her already. Her name's Kathy Marks, and she wrote Lost in Paradise. A really good book, a really fascinating read because it kind of goes through everything that we've gone through, but it's in a bit more detail. It tells a few more stories. It fleshes it out, and you get to understand a few more kind of people's points of view as well. Yeah, but I hope you enjoyed the podcast. I don't know, Sam, if we need to get a drink right now.
Yeah, I don't think I enjoyed it.
No. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I might go and cry and
We'll have a sit down.
have a good sit down.
Have a good sit down.
Cup of tea and a biscuit, maybe.
Well, like I say, fingers crossed. By 2050, but no one left. Everyone will be dead.
That's all we can hope for.
That's all we can hope for. So. To round off, I hope everyone enjoyed the podcast. I don't think we did. I'm not sure what we're going to do next. I've got a few ideas.
Can we do something less horrible?
We'll do something a little lighter on the child abuse.
Yeah, less child
angle.
abuse and less rape would be nice.
I'm thinking of doing a World War II, like an alt history podcast.
Yeah, the lightest subject there is.
World
Nazis.
War II. Yeah, Nazis. Yeah. They didn't do anything. They were pretty cool guys. They were pretty cool guys.
They recycled and everything.
Yeah, they were. Yeah, Hitler was a vegetarian. Good guy, like dogs. Yeah. I can't see where that can go wrong.
Absolutely not.
So yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. We're gonna get something up whenever this. We're recording this kind of the middle of December. We'll probably record something, I don't know, New Year or
soonish,
whenever. Yeah. But yeah, we're thinking of doing an alt history podcast. The Chagos Islands I actually mentioned, I think, are really interesting, so we might do something on that. If anyone is happening to listen 3 podcasts in to a brand new podcast,
to all of the 10 of you listening,
several of you that might be listening, if you've got a suggestion, let me know. I'll happily be open to understanding it. I kind of want to hit the whole, sons of bitches of history, stuff you don't know about.
Everyone's a dickhead.
Any pluggables, Sam?
As per usual, check out my YouTube channel. It's Sammy Shares. I've got lots of good TV and film reviews on there.
Yeah.
Specifically...
Little lighter on the entertainment side as well.
Well, we're talking about Westworld recently, which is, a little bit lighter. Does also contain rape, unfortunately. But I don't talk about it much.
Good, okay. You just can't avoid it with us, can you?
No.
It's our favourite subject, it seems. Anyway, but from myself, Paul Watson, and my co-host and guest, Sam Nicholson, goodbye.
Goodbye, everybody.